My mom is vacuuming upstairs. Uh, we could be here for a while, guys. Hold, please. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookish Babbles, the podcast where we reread our favorite books and chat about them. I'm your host, Alyson, and without further ado, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of Bookish Babbles. Today we are talking about the last 3 chapters of Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. A lot of shit happens, and things will only get more insane and tragic in the next book. So that being said, I hope everyone's doing well. We're deep into spooky season. Halloween's coming up in a couple weeks. I have no plans, except it looks like to just keep rewatching Stranger Things and listen to Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush for 3 days straight, but we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, it's not the only thing I'm doing. I'm also reading Anne of Green Gables. Yeah, watching Stranger Things and reading the Anne of Green Gables book series is apparently all I want to do. So, yep, going great for me right now. Anyway, I don't really have much to say, other than I'm excited that I can wear flannels and sweaters, and more behind-the-scenes photos of the Ballad movie have been released. I am excited, and I still can't wait for the movie. And I still keep rewatching the Percy Jackson teaser trailer. But anyway, let's get into the book that we're talking about today. Okay, so last week, more people die because, that's what happens in this series. Katniss and Finnick are, tormented by the Jabberjays, and we get one of the best Everlark scenes ever. This week, the Quarter Quell comes to an explosive end. Secrets are revealed, and an even bigger bombshell is dropped at the end. See what I did there? So funny. That was so bad. Anyway, let's dive into chapter 25. Okay, so this chapter opens with Katniss. She wakes up and for once is in a good mood. She describes it as a delicious feeling of happiness that is somehow connected with Peeta, which she thinks is a bit strange since, it seems kind of like that level of happiness doesn't seem like it would belong in a Hunger Games arena, not to mention at the rate things are going, Katniss is sure she'll be dead by the end of the day. But I guess that's just the magic of being with someone who you truly love and emotionally connect with, aka Peeta. Though Katniss is still blissfully unaware of her own feelings, which is pretty funny and relatable. Anyway, everyone else is already up, and another parachute has arrived. They each get 5 District 3 rolls, and somehow the joke they made the night before about whoever is left alive getting the food isn't so funny now. And naturally, with the number of tributes already down, Katniss knows that this alliance can't last much longer, and now kind of disbelieves her earlier theory that the others are protecting Peeta, and that perhaps it's all just been a strategy to win their trust and catch them off guard. So coming to this realization, Katniss concludes that she has no idea what's going on, and therefore she and Peeta should tap out before the group, before they get killed. And continues to be about being oblivious for her feelings for Peeta. Exhibit A, this passage on page 356. I sit next to Peeta on the sand to eat my rolls. For some reason, it's difficult to look at him. Maybe it was all the kissing last night. Although the two of us kissing isn't anything new, it might not even have felt any different for him. Maybe it's knowing the brief amount of time we have left and how we're working at such cross purposes when it comes to who should survive these games. Oh, the cluelessness of teenagers. It's a beautiful thing. So after they're done eating, Katniss finds an excuse to talk to Peeta alone by saying that she's going to teach him to swim. And Joanna's already suspicious since she watches them for a while Katniss shows Peeta some of the basic strokes. But eventually Joanna loses interest and goes to take a nap. A relatable queen. Katniss also discovers that she can now clean off the scabs and, fresh healed skin. Yay! And while she's doing that, she and Peeta talk about, leaving the group since they're now down to the final 8. And in the end, they agree to leave after Brutus and Anabaria are dead. And they're pretty sure that Beetee has some kind of plan brewing, so that's another reason to stick around and find out. Though Katniss still hesitates since she wants to leave ASAP. But if they leave, then they instantly become targets, and she's sure that Joanna will kill Beetee as soon as they leave, but, can't worry too much about Beetee because only one person can survive, and she chooses to save Peeta, so sorry, Beetee. But anyway, Katniss and Peeta end their conversation, and Katniss calls Finnick over by yelling, "Hey, Finnick, come on in, we figured out how to make you pretty again." Oh boy. So the three of them clean up, and Beetee gathers everyone to tell them his plan. So their next objective is obviously to kill Brutus and Anabaria, who have very likely to begun suspect that something like a clock system is going on at this point, especially since the game makers interrupting their fight was meant to disorient all of them. And Katniss notices that the way Beetee is talking to them, she compares it to a school teacher about to ease children into a lesson. And it's kind of a cool scene, so I'm just going to read it. So starting on page 359, started with Peeta saying, "Where we are now, on the beach," says Peeta, "it's the safest place." "So why aren't they," meaning Bruce and Anabaria, "on the beach," says Beetee. "Because we're here," says Joanna impatiently. "Exactly, we're here," claiming the beach. "Now, where would you go?" says Beetee. "I think about the deadly jungle, the occupied beach. I'd hide just at the edge of the jungle so I could escape if an attack came, and so I could spy on us. Also to eat," Finnick says. "The jungle's full of strange creatures and plants, but by watching us I'd know the seafood's safe." Beetee smiles at us Beetee smiles at us as if we've exceeded his expectations. "Yes, good. You do see. Now, here's what I propose. At a 12 o'clock strike. What happens exactly at noon and at midnight?" "The lightning bolt hits the tree," I said. "Yes. So what I'm suggesting is that after the bolt hits at noon, but before it hits at midnight, we run my wire from that tree all the way down to the salt water, which is, of course, highly conductive. When the bolt strikes, the electricity will travel down the wire and into not only the water, but also the surrounding beach, which will still be damp from the 10 o'clock wave. Anyone in contact with those surfaces at that moment will be electrocuted," says Beetee. There's a long pause while we all digest Beetee's plan. "It seems a bit fantastical to me, impossible even. But why? I've set thousands of snares. Isn't this just a larger snare with a more scientific component? Could it work? How can we even question it? We tributes, trained to gather fish and lumber and coal. What do we know about harnessing power from the sky?" Peeta takes a stab at it. "Will that wire really be able to conduct that much power, Beetee? It looks so fragile, like it would just burn up." "Oh, it will, but not until the current has passed through it, and it will act something like a fuse, in fact, except the electricity will travel along with it," says Beetee. "How do you know?" asks Joanna, clearly not convinced. "Because I invented it," says Beetee, as if slightly surprised. "It's not actually wire in the usual sense, nor is it the lightning natural, nor the tree a real tree. You know trees better than any of us, Joanna. It would be destroyed by now, wouldn't it?" Yes, she says glumly. Don't worry about the wire. It will do just what I say, Beatty assures us. And where will we be when this happens? Asks Finnick. Far enough up in the jungle to be safe, Beatty replies. The careers will be safe too then, unless they're in the vicinity of the water, I point out. That's right, says Beatty. But all the seafood will be cooked, says PETA. Probably more than cooked, says Beatty. We will most likely be eliminating that as a food source for good. But you found other edible things in the jungle, right, Katniss? Yes, nuts and rats, I say. And we have sponsors. Well then, I don't see that as a problem, says Beatty. But as we are allies, and this will require all our efforts, the decision of whether or not to attempt this is up to you four. We are like school children, completely unable to dispute his theory with anything but the most elementary concerns, most of which don't even have anything to do with his actual plan. I look at the others' disconcerted faces. Why not, I say. If it fails, there's no harm done. If it works, there's a decent chance we'll kill them. And even if we don't and just kill the seafood, Brutus and Anabaria lose that as a food source. I say we try it, says PETA. Katniss is right. Finnick looks at Joanna and raises his eyebrow. He will not go forward without her. All right, she says finally. It's better than hunting them down in the jungle anyway, and I doubt they'll figure out our plan since we can barely understand it ourselves. Kind of on the same page as Joanna. I only kind of understand the plan, but I trust Beatty, and, it sort of works in the end, but we'll get there. So after that, Beatty wants to inspect the lightning tree, so they break camp and head over there. Also, Beatty is still too weak to walk on his own, so PETA and Finnick have to take turns carrying him. As they get closer to the tree, Finnick suggests that Katniss take the lead since she can hear the force field after all, but Beatty immediately knows this is bullshit, but doesn't say anything since, he's a good friend. So they make it to the lightning tree. Katniss does her thing, throwing nuts at the force field, and Beatty starts doing his prep work. Finnick's on guard duty. Joanna gets water. PETA gathers nuts, and Katniss hunts some tree rats nearby. And at some point, they hear clicks rising from the next sector over, so it's 11 o'clock now. And whatever's making the clicking sound is probably insects of some sort. Either way, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really want to find out. So they move on to the blood rain section to avoid the lightning. Katniss observes the lightning strike from the top of the tree at Beatty's request, and they make their way to the 10 o'clock beach where the wave has already hit. And Beatty gives the rest of them the day off, and Katniss compares it to getting out of school early, which is the most exciting feeling ever, I think. Anyway, they take turns taking naps, but by afternoon they're all awake and restless, so they decide since it'll be their last chance for seafood, they should have a feast. They catch fish, gather shellfish, and dive for oysters. While they're cleaning out the seafood, PETA finds a pearl and gives it to Katniss, which is just another really sweet moment. I swear to God, Suzanne is dumping us with these sweet Everlark moments because she knows what she's going to do to us in the next book. So with that being said, I'm going to read the very sweet scene at the end of the chapter. Okay, so it starts with PETA finding the pearl, and he says, "Hey, look at this." He holds up a glistening, perfect pearl about the size of a pea. If you put enough pressure on coal, it turns to pearls, he says earnestly to Finnick. No, it doesn't, says Finnick dismissively. But I crack up, remembering that's how clueless Effie Trinket presented us to the people of the capital last year, before anyone knew us, as coal pressured into pearls by our weighty existence, beauty that arose out of pain. PETA rinses the pearl off in the water and hands it to me. For you. I hold it out on my palm and examine its iridescent surface in the sunlight. Yes, I will keep it. For the few remaining hours of my life, I will keep it close. This last gift from PETA, the only one I can really accept. Perhaps it'll give me strength in the final moments. Thanks, I say, closing my fist around it. I look coolly into the blue eyes of the person who is now my greatest opponent, the person who will keep me alive at his own expense, and I promise myself I will defeat his plan. The laughter drains from those eyes, and they are staring so intensely into mine. It's like they can read my thoughts. The locket didn't work, did it? Peeta says, even though Finnick is right there, even though everyone can hear him. Katniss, it worked, I say, but not the way I wanted it to, he says, averting his glance. After that, he will look at nothing but oysters. Just as we're about to eat, a parachute appears bearing 2 supplements to our meal, a small pot of spicy red sauce and yet another round of rolls from District 3. Finnick, of course, immediately counts them. 24 again, he says. 32 rolls then, so we each take 5, leaving 7, which we will never divide equally. It's bread for only 1. The salty fish flesh, the succulent shellfish, even the oysters seem tasty, vastly improved by the sauce. We gorge ourselves until no one can hold another bite, and even then there are leftovers. They won't keep those, so we toss all the remaining food back into the water so the careers won't get it when we leave. No one bothers about the shells. The waves should clear those away. There's nothing to do now but wait. Pete and I sit at the edge of the water, hand in hand, wordless. He gave his speech last night, but it didn't change my mind, and nothing I can say will change his. The time for persuasive gifts is over. I have the pearl, though, secured in a parachute with the spile and the medicine at my waist. I hope it makes it back to District 12. Surely my mother and Prim will know to return it to Peeta before they bury my body. Seriously, Suzanne, calm down. Can't take all these feelings happening. Anyway, time for a break. We'll get back and shit's gonna go down. Okay, we're back, and like I said before, shit's about to get insane. Okay, so slightly brief time jump. It's nighttime now, because the anthem is playing, and no faces appear in the night sky that night, because for once no one died. Yay! But it also means that the audience will probably be getting bored at this point, but hopefully they're all invested enough in Beetie's plan, so the game makers will hopefully hold off doing anything to, speed things along. So around 9 o'clock, they head for the lightning tree. Beetee does his thing with the wire, setting everything up. And then Beetee asks Katniss and Joanna to take the coil of wire to the beach, unwinding it as they go, lay it across the 12 o'clock spot, and drop the metal part into the water. Then, of course, get the hell off the beach. Peeta immediately says he wants to go with them, obviously unwilling to let Katniss out of his sight now. But Beetee makes it very clear that there's no room for argument, and this is when both Katniss and Peeta's internal monologues are probably along the lines of fuck, shit, damn, fuck my life, shit, fuck, etc. Because the last thing they want to do before leaving is, get separated, but Beetee is also right since, with his bad leg, Peeta won't be fast enough to keep up with Joanna and Katniss to get to the beach in time, or get off the beach in time. And, they have to run to a tree in the 1 to 2 o'clock sector and not go back to the beach until, Beetee's assessed the damage. So Katniss has to give Peeta a kiss and promise to see him at midnight, which, that always means they won't see each other. Is it a slightly predictable trope? Yes. Does it still emotionally crush me every time? Also yes. So without further discussion, Katniss and Joanna head off. Oh, God. About halfway down, they hear the bugs clicking, indicating that it's after 11. Joanna says they should hurry, obviously, very eager to put as much distance as they can between themselves and the beach. And, by the way, in the movie at this part, she says, something in a similar vein. She says, frying is not how I want to go. Which is so sad considering what happens to her in Mockingjay. But anyway, Katniss takes the coil of wire for a bit, and then shit happens. Well, my dog's running around upstairs right now, but whatever. Yeah, she agrees. Shit is happening. Um, so someone not far ahead has cut the wire and will be on them at any moment. And just as Katniss is coming to this conclusion, reaches for an arrow, Joanna smacks her on the side of the head with the metal cylinder. Her head is pounding and vision blurry since, Joanna hit her pretty hard in the left temple. Joanna then digs her knife into Katniss's forearm and digs for something, which just sounds so painful and gross. Like, bleh. I don't do well, guys, watching, scenes where, people are injured and they have to, like, cut into something. Like, ooh, I was rewatching Stranger Things season 3, and there's, a part where a little bit of the Mind Flayer monster gets into Elle's leg and blah. Anyway, if you've seen Stranger Things, you know which part I'm talking about in that season, and just blah, I can't take it. Anyway, what was I saying? Right, okay, so then Joanna smears Katniss's face in blood and tells her to stay down, and then she takes off. Brutus and Nebaria see Katniss, assume she's good as dead, and then they take off after Joanna. Katniss is still, pretty understandably very disoriented. But one thing's clear to her, that that the alliance is over, and Finnick is likely in on it with Joanna since they've known each other longer and are better friends. So she has to get back to Peeta ASAP. Katniss manages to drag herself up and get some of the leaves with special moss to bind her bloody arm. And just as Katniss comes to the conclusion she should no longer trust Finnick, guess who appears? The man himself. So Katniss hides before he can see her. Finnick's calling out for Joanna and Katniss, running off in the directions that the careers went. Katniss makes her way back to the lightning tree, desperate to get to Peeta. On her way, Katniss feels something wrapped around her leg, and for a second she thinks that it's one of Finnick's nets, but nope, just the wire. And she uses it to guide herself back to the tree. She gets there, and there's still no sign of Peeta. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm just thinking of this now. Just the way, like, everything's all disoriented. Katniss doesn't know where anyone is. She thinks she hears, like, Peeta calling to her at one point, like, and doesn't know who to trust. Like, does it not remind you guys of the scene at the end of Ballad when, Coriolanus is wandering around the woods hunting for Lucy Gray? And it's just, I don't know, it's just an interesting parallel between the two, because both are confused, disoriented, injured at this point, and both looking for, their significant other, except like, very different circumstances, because Katniss obviously wants to protect Peeta, whereas Coriolanus had the full intention of harming Lucy Gray. So, oh my god, it's so cool to think about. And also, there are no Mockingjays in this jungle, whereas, for the Coriolanus and Lucy Gray scene at the end of Ballad, there are hundreds of Mockingjays around them because Lucy Gray used the Mockingjays to help hide herself. But anyway, I'm literally just coming to this conclusion, guys. Like, it's not in my notes. Okay, where am I? Where am I in my notes? I don't know, because I just thought of this, and oh my god, I can't wait to see that scene in the movie even more now. Okay, yeah, she gets to the tree, no sign of Peeta, but Katniss does find Beetee on the ground. He's still alive. He's not quite unconscious, but he is very disoriented and, moaning, so he's kind of incapacitated. Katniss tries to ask him what's happening. He doesn't give a very audible or understandable answer. And then she notices that Beetee has Peeta's knife from earlier, and she's wondering, like, what the hell Beetee was trying to accomplish. And again, crazy shit just happens in the last couple pages, so I'm just going to read from page 377 to the end of the chapter, guys. Okay, I just had to stop recording for about 10 minutes because my mom was vacuuming upstairs. Oh, hi, Ray. And my dog's down here because she's scared of vacuums. Okay, where were we? Right, I was going to read page 377 to the end of the chapter. Thank you all for your patience. Katniss! I hear his voice, though he's a far distance away. But what is he doing? Peeta must have figured out that everyone is hunting us by now. Katniss! I can't protect him. I can't move faster. far, and my shooting abilities are questionable at best. I do one thing. I can draw the attackers away from him and over to me. Peeta! I scream out loud. Peeta! I'm here! Peeta! Yes, I will draw them in. Any in my vicinity, away from Peeta and over to me, and the lightning tree that will soon be a weapon in and of itself. I'm here! I'm here! He won't make it. Not with that leg in the night. He will never make it in time. Peeta! It isn't working. I can hear them coming. 2 of them crashing through the jungle. My knees start to give out and I sink down next to Beatty, resting my weight on my heels. My bow and arrow lift into position. If I can take them out, will Peeta survive the rest? Anabaria and Finnick reach the lightning tree. They can't see me sitting above them in the slope, my skin camouflage in ointment. I home in on Anabaria's neck. With any luck, when I kill her, Finnick will duck behind the tree for cover just as the lightning bolt strikes, and it will be any second. There's only a faint insect click here and there. I can kill them now. I can kill them both. Another cannon. Katniss! Peeta's voice howls for me, but this time I don't answer. Beatty still breathes faintly beside me. He and I will soon die. Finnick and Anabaria will die. Peeta is alive. 2 cannons have sounded. Brutus, Joanna, Chaff. 2 of them are already dead. That will leave Peeta with only 1 tribute to kill, and that is the very best I can do. 1 enemy. Enemy. The word is tugging at a recent memory, pulling it into the present. The look on Hamish's face. Katniss, when you're in the arena, the scowl, the misgiving. What? I hear my own voice tighten as I bristle at some unspoken accusation. You just remember who the enemy is, Hamish says. That's all. Hamish's last words of advice to me. Why would I need reminding? I have always known who the enemy is, who starves and tortures and kills us in the arena, who will soon kill everyone I love. My bow drops as his meaning registers. Yes, I know who the enemy is, and it's not Anabaria. I finally see Beatty's knife with clear eyes. My shaking hand slide the wires from the hilt, wind it around the arrow just above the feathers, and secure it with a knot picked up in training. I rise, turning to the force field, fully revealing myself, but no longer caring, only caring about where I should direct my tip, where Beatty would have driven the knife if he'd been able to choose. My bow tilts up at the wavering square, the flaw. What did he call it that day? The chink in the armor. I let the arrow fly, see it hit the mark and vanish, pulling the thread of gold behind it. My hair stands on end and the lightning strikes the tree. A flash of white runs up the wire, and for just a moment the dome bursts into dazzling blue light. I'm thrown backward to the ground, body useless, paralyzed, eyes frozen wide as feathery bits of matter rain down on me. I can't reach Peeta. I can't even reach my pearl. My eyes strain to capture one last image of beauty to take with me. Right before the explosion begins, I find a star. Goddamn, this whole last section is just so good. It just really drives home the fact that Katniss is done playing the games, in the biggest way. Because she goes from, focusing solely on just keeping Peeta alive and just focusing on this little game that the Capitol has where, it has the districts at each other's throats, but, widens the lens a bit because, Brutus and Anabaria just a moment ago were, her biggest threats against Peeta, and now she's not even considering them anymore. They're not the ultimate enemy, and she got so caught up in the games, and now she's been reminded of, all the real problems that are going on, and so what does she do? She destroys the force field, because, yeah, so good. But anyway, break time, and one more chapter to go, and even more devastating bombshells are dropped. And we're back here at the end of the book, and there's only one more to go. Okay, so we pick up right where we left off. Katniss is even more incapacitated than she was before, and everything is either exploding or on fire around her. It's a miracle she wasn't crushed or burned to a crisp. Anyway, the writing on the first page is, of course, really good, so I have to read it. Everything seems to erupt at once. The earth explodes into showers of dirt and plant matter. Trees burst into flames. Even the sky fills with brightly colored blossoms of light. I can't think why the sky is being bombed until I realize the game makers are shooting off fireworks up there, while the real destruction occurs on the ground. Just in case it's not enough fun watching the obliteration of the arena and the remaining tributes, or perhaps to illuminate our glorious ends. Will they let anyone survive? Will there be a victor of the 75th Hunger Games? Maybe not. After all, what is this Quarter Quell but... What was it President Snow read from the card? A reminder to the rebels that even the strongest among them cannot overcome the power of the capital. Not even the strongest of the strong will triumph. Perhaps they never intended to have a victor in these games at all. Or perhaps my final act of rebellion forced their hand. I'm sorry, Peeta, I think. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Save him? More likely I stole his last chance of life, condemned him by destroying the force field. Maybe if we had all played by the rules, they might have let him live. I know I've said it a million times, but how dare Suzanne Collins be such a talented writer? Anyway, the hovercraft appears to pick Katniss up, and when she's inside, she sees Plutarch, confirming her fears that her death is going to be slow and public, so the best she can hope for now is to bleed to death before they can do anything to her, but she only blacks out. Katniss drifts in and out of consciousness a few times. She has tubes hooked up to her, and she's strapped down, obviously forcing her to stay alive. At some point, she sees Beetee before passing out again. When she does finally, truly wake up, the restraints are gone, and the only other person in the room is Beetee, still unconscious, being sustained by machines. She has no idea where Peeta is, but resolves that the best thing to do for him would be to mercy kill him before the Capitol can torture him. She's not gonna like what she finds out soon. Katniss finds a syringe and creeps down the hall to find Peeta. What she does end up finding is a metal door slightly ajar, and she can hear voices on the other side. One talking about communications being down in 7, 10, and 12. Wonder why they can't get a hold of anyone in 12. Guess they don't know yet. But on the bright side, 11 has control of transportation now, so they at least can, distribute food out. And it sounds like the voice belongs to Plutarch, and he's speaking to Finnick. And Plutarch tells Finnick that they can't get him to 4, but he's given special orders to retrieve her if possible. I think we know that the her they're talking about is Annie. And everything is awful for everyone. But Katniss doesn't know that. She doesn't understand the context of the conversation yet. Thinks maybe Finnick is being excused since, he's so beloved by the Capitol. And then the most unexpected thing happens. Katniss hears Haymitch's voice. Someone she never expected to see again, and who can't think of why he would be in the same room as the head game maker. Haymitch says something to Finnick about, not doing anything stupid and to stay alive so that she, aka Annie, stays alive. And hearing Haymitch's voice is enough to make Katniss, barge into the room and reveal herself, because what the bejeebas is going on here? And looking out the window, it's the first time Katniss realizes that they're flying and not underground like she originally thought. And Haymitch greets her by saying, "Done knocking yourself out, sweetheart?" Which is, such a classic Haymitch greeting, even among tragedy. And, and he knows that he has some devastating news to tell Katniss. But he still makes the sarcastic comment, "You and a syringe against the Capitol? This is why no one lets you make the plans." Love that they included that line in the movie. Anyway, then Haymitch forces the syringe out of her hand and makes her sit down in a chair next to Finnick. And Plutarch's much kinder toward Katniss, gives her some food and tells her to eat. And then Haymitch explains what's been, going on behind the scenes. So there's been a plan in place to break Katniss out of the arena the moment that the Quell was announced. The victor tributes from 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 11 were all in on it, with varying degrees of knowledge. Plutarch Heavensby has been part of a secret undercover group for several years now, aiming to overthrow the capital. He assigned Beatty to blow up the force field and made sure that the wire was among the weapons in the cornucopia, which explains why Beatty was so willing to take a knife in the back for to get the wire during the bloodbath. The bread they were receiving in the arena was code for the time of the rescue. Basically, the district where the bread came from indicated the day, and the number of rolls equaled the hour. Hence, why Finnick was so obsessively counting the bread every time they got it. Also, the hovercraft they're in belongs to District 13. Surprise! Bonnie and Twill were right. 13 is still alive and mostly thriving. But either way, they're working against the capital, so yay! And meanwhile, most of the other districts are now in, full-scale rebellion mode, because, they're done with the capital's bullshit. And, as a reader, this is all really exciting, because, the rug's been pulled out from under us. But it's exciting because this is what the whole book has been building up to. And we're excited to finally, fight back against the capital. So we can finally see Snow taken down. And it's great because we know that there was a plan in place to save Katniss. And all sounds good on paper, but immediately in the next paragraph, Katniss reminds us that the reality of her situation actually sucks. Here's what the passage says on page 385. It's an awful lot to take in, this elaborate plan in which I was a piece, just as I was meant to be a piece in the Hunger Games, used without consent, without knowledge. At least in the Hunger Games, I knew I was being played with. Such a good passage, and I think the reality check we need, because yes, the whole plan was to rescue Katniss, and supporting the group that wants to take down the capital, but they still manipulated Katniss. They still used her. And this is such a great setup for so much shit that goes down in Mockingjay. So much of that book is exposing all the morally gray things that the supposed good guys do. And, things are not so black and white. And in this moment, I think Katniss is just mostly pissed that she wasn't let in on what was going on because it left her feeling used, as she expressed in the passage I just read. But unfortunately, the reason Haymitch gives us to why she and Peeta were left in the dark makes sense, because as he points out, once they blow the force field, Katniss and Peeta will be the first ones the capital would try to capture, especially now since, Katniss blew it up. So the less they knew, the better for them. So it was for their protection, but Katniss is understandably angry because she ended up with, no say or agency in the situation in the end, which sucks. And in the end, the tributes who were all in on it were all willing to die in order to protect Katniss and Peeta. For Katniss, because, she's the whole symbol for this rebellion, and Peeta, because they know if he dies, Katniss wouldn't be able to function, which, Snow knows too. Katniss protests that this isn't true because Joanna tried to kill her, but nope, Joanna led the couriers away from her and got the tracker out of Katniss's arm. And also the next couple pages, I tried to cherry pick passages, but it's impossible, so I'm going to do another reading for you guys. We had to save you because you're the Mockingjay, Katniss, says Plutarch. While you live, the revolution lives. The bird, the pin, the song, the berries, the watch, the cracker, the dress that bursts into flames. I am the Mockingjay, the one that survived despite the capital's plans, the symbol of the rebellion. It's what I suspected in the woods when I found Bonnie and Twill escaping, though I never really understood the magnitude. But then I wasn't meant to understand. I think of Hamish's sneering at my plans to flee District 12, start my own uprising, even the very notion that District 13 could exist. Subterfuges and deceptions. And if he could do that, behind his mask of sarcasm and drunkenness, so convincingly and for so long, what else has he lied about? I know what else. Peeta, I whisper, my heart sinking. The others kept Peeta alive because if he died, we knew there'd be no keeping you in an alliance, says Hamish, and we couldn't risk leaving you unprotected. His words are matter of fact, his expression unchanged, but he can't hide the tinge of gray that colors his face. Where is Peeta? I hissed at him. He was picked up by the Capitol, along with Joanna and Anabaria, says Hamish, and finally he has the decency to drop his gaze. Technically, I am unarmed, but no one should ever underestimate the harm that fingernails can do, especially if the target is unprepared. I lunge across the table and rake mine down Hamish's face, causing blood to flow and damage to one eye. Then we are both screaming terrible, terrible things at each other, and Finnick is trying to drag me out, and I know it's all Hamish can do not to rip me apart. But I'm the Mockingjay. I'm the Mockingjay, and it's too hard keeping me alive as it is. This whole scene just hurts. And it only gets worse. Katniss is now properly sedated, lying on the table again, and Finnick apologizes to her, saying how he really wanted to go back for Peeta and Joanna, but he just, physically couldn't move. But Katniss doesn't answer, not caring about anything at the moment. And then, back to another reading on page 388. Finnick tries to comfort Katniss with this. Katniss, I'm sorry. Finnick's voice comes from the bed next to me and slips into my consciousness. Perhaps because we're in the same kind of pain. I wanted to go back for him and Joanna, but I couldn't move. I don't answer. Finnick O'Dare's good intentions means less than nothing. It's better for him than Joanna. They'll figure out he doesn't know anything pretty fast, and they won't kill him if they think they can use him against you, says Finnick. Like bait, I say to the ceiling. Like how they'll use Annie for bait, Finnick. I can hear him weeping, but I don't care. They probably won't even bother to question her. She's so far gone. Gone right off the deep end years ago in her games. There's a good chance I'm headed in the same direction. Maybe I'm already going crazy and no one has the heart to tell me. I feel crazy enough. I wish she was dead, he says. I wish they were all dead and we were too. It would be best. Well, there's no good response to that. I can hardly dispute it since I was walking around with a single syringe to kill Peeta when I found him. Do I really want him dead? What I want is to have him back, but I'll never get him back now. Even if the rebel forces could somehow overthrow the Capitol, you can be sure President Snow's last act would be to cut Peeta's throat. No, I will never get him back. So then dead is best. But will Peeta know that, or will he keep fighting? He's so strong and such a good liar. Does he think he has a chance of surviving? Does he even care if he does? He wasn't planning on it anyway. He had already signed off his life. Maybe if he knows I was rescued, he's even happy. Feels he's fulfilled his mission to keep me alive. I think I hate him even more than I do Hamish. And again, no one in the series is allowed to be happy. So Katniss starts to intensely dissociate, understandable enough, and there's another heartbreaking line that says, they can pump whatever they want into my arm, but it takes more than that to keep a person going once she's lost the will to live. That's incredibly dark. She also has a fantasy that maybe if she doesn't die, that if she does die, then Peeta could at least be allowed to live as an Avox, and if not, then it's enough for her to die at a spite. Up until this point, this is probably Katniss's lowest moment. And it's a lot. And it's kind of unbelievable that it only gets worse in the next book. So she's incredibly angry with Hamish because, Katniss, she trusted him and he basically used her and Peeta like a game maker uses tributes and has really dark, intrusive thoughts about herself. about how Hamish was right about no one letting her make the plans because she can't tell friend from foe. And we are literally on the last 2 pages of the chapter and the book, so I just have to read it because on top of everything else that's happened, we still have one more bombshell dropped on us. A lot of people come by to talk to me, but I make all their words sound like the clicking of the insects in the jungle, meaningless and distant, dangerous but only if approached. Whenever the words start to become distinct, I moan until they give me more painkiller, and that fixes things right up. Until one time I open my eyes and find someone I cannot block out looking down at me, someone who will not plead or explain or think he can alter my design with entreaties, because he alone really knows how I operate. "Gale," I whisper. "Hey, Catnip." He reaches down and pushes a strand of hair out of my eyes. One side of his face has been burned fairly recently. His arm is in a sling, and I can see bandages under his minor shirt. What has happened to him? How is he even here? Something very bad has happened back home. It's not so much of a question of forgetting Peta as remembering the others. All it takes is one look at Gale, and they come surging into the present, demanding to be acknowledged. "Prim," I gasp. "She's alive. So is your mother. I got them out in time," he says. "They're not in District 12? I ask. "After the games, they sent in planes. Dropped fire bombs." He hesitates. "Well, you know what happened to the Hob." I do know. I saw it go up. That old warehouse, embedded with coal dust, the whole district's covered with the stuff. A new kind of horror begins to rise up inside me as I imagine fire bombs hitting the seam. "They're not in District 12, I repeat, as if saying it will somehow fend off the truth. "Katniss," Gale says softly. I recognize that voice. It's the same one he uses to approach wounded animals before he delivers a death blow. I instinctively raise my hand to block out his words, but he catches it and holds on tightly. "Don't," I whisper. But Gale is not one to keep secrets from me. "Katniss, there is no District 12. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is probably one of the, if not the best, book chew cliffhanger ever, because oh my god, everything in this book has just been getting more and more intense and insane and just building up to, this huge war. And because all this time, this war's been building up kind of in the background because, Katniss was left in the dark, and oh my freaking god. So, yeah. Next time we'll be, wrapping up the Catching Fire book and then talking about the movie. Although I do have a couple bonus episodes planned that could come out before doing the wrap-up episode, and of course I have a couple guests coming on, so that'll be really fun. Thank you guys so much for listening and following. I'll elaborate more on my thoughts for all these wrap-up episodes, but yep, I think that's all the announcements I have. Yep, and other than the usual stuff, Instagram and TikTok linked below, podcast YouTube channel where I occasionally remember to make bonus content. Whoops, oh well. But yeah, I hope you're all enjoying the turn of the season. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate it. I love making this podcast. Please leave a review because, helps boost the algorithm, all that good stuff. But yeah, I hope y'all have a great day/night, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!